문명의 발상지인 그리스. 지금은 이 나라의 결정과 앞날을 놓고 전 세계가 조마조마하는 마음으로 지켜보고 있습니다. 과연 그리스는 유로존을 탈퇴할 것인가? 한때 복지 천국으로 여겨졌던 유로존의 경제위기를 통해 우리는 무엇을 배울 수 있을 것인가? 더 리더 오늘은 세계경제연구원의 초청으로 방한한 세계적인 석학 기소로만 교수님을 모시고 이 같은 질문들에 대한 답을 들어보겠습니다. Professor Gisurman, thank you for joining us despite your very busy schedule. Yeah. Would you briefly introduce yourself to our viewers?
I'm a French economist, and so I've written many books about the economy in developing countries, because I think that the most interesting part of our time is how countries which were very poor became developed, and I write a lot of my opinions in various newspapers around the world, and I'm what we call in French a French public intellectual, talking about everything and nothing, and with a strong interest in South Korea since 30 years.
Yeah, actually I read some of your books. I remember the one book about the Chinese economy. Yeah. Thank you. And my first question is about the European economic situation. The world is keenly paying attention to the possibility of the Brexit. What is your take on this?
Well, I think this is dramatic for Greece, but a few consequences for the rest of Europe. Greece represents only 3% of our GDP, and the country has been awfully ill-managed, and it's even worse with the current government. So there is a strong chance that Greece will leave the Eurozone. If they leave the Eurozone, they will stay a member of the European Union. The both are distinct. And if they leave the Eurozone, it will be dramatic for the poorest Greek people. They're indebted in euro. And if the euro is lost and replaced by a national currency, they won't be able to replace, to repay their debt. What will happen? I mean, people learn from their own mistakes, and they will understand that they chose the wrong government. They will have new elections, and I think they will have a better, more rational election, and they will come back into the Eurozone.
So in that case, I mean that if the Brexit takes place, what will be the impact or influence of Brexit on the Eurozone economy and the world economy?
Well, practically no consequence.
No consequences.
No, because it's a very small economy, and as I said, 3% of the European economy. So really there would be very, very little consequence for Europe as a whole. The consequences would be very negative for the Greek people themselves, not for all the Greeks, because the wealthy people are out of the country since a long time, and the most wealthy institution in Greece is the church, and the church will not be impacted because they don't pay taxes anyway. So it will be the poor people, and it's very bizarre that the poor people would be victim of a leftist government. But you know, many times in history you must make these big mistakes to understand what economy is about. And what I deeply regret is that the Greeks didn't learn from Spain. Spain was in the same situation. But the Spanish government, with a lot of courage and understanding, they did the right thing. I mean, they work harder, they deregulated the labor market, and now Spain is one of the fastest growing economy in Europe.
Now Brexit seems to be a buzzword in the UK after the election. Of course, they'll have to go through a referendum.
Yes.
Would Brexit be a possibility in your view? What choice will they make?
Yeah, but it's a very different story. First of all, the United Kingdom is not a member of the Eurozone. So the economic consequence, I think, would be very modest. because most of the free trade between the United Kingdom and Europe will go on. You know, the British, they still live in a world where they think that they are a global power. But if you look at the economic figures, basically they are part of the European system. But they are now in a political turmoil where the Scots want to be independent and the Welsh want to be independent and even the English want to be independent from the United Kingdom. So I think it's a political situation. I do think that the government will be able to handle this situation, and at the end of the day I think they will remain in the European Union. If they leave, the consequence would be to make Germany and France stronger as a diplomatic and military power. I think this would be a pity for England. So I think also United Kingdom had a lot to lose. It's a very strange story, actually, Europe. Yeah. Europe is a big success. I mean, we were at war during 1,000 years. And our fathers decided to build Europe to stop wars and to be at peace. We are at peace. But people have already forgotten why we are at peace. We are at peace because we built the European Union.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting point, yeah. The fact we are now talking about the Grexit and Brexit indicate that there is a kind of serious governance problem in the European Union. Do you think that Europe can move on without a higher level of integration, such as the fiscal union or political union?
The paradox is that what you describe is already the case. If you look at the history of the European Union, it started as a free trade union. And little by little it was understood that if you want peace and free trade and prosperity, you need to have a convergence in economic policies. And we have convergence. And also on the day when it has been decided to have one currency, that was the end of a totally independent economic policies in each country, because you cannot go for inflation or deflation. So the powers of the national governments are shrinking. The center of Europe, the central bank, is really the key player. And also there is a consensus on free market. It is new, you know, Europe was very socialist. And now everybody is free market oriented, except Greece, but you know, and okay, this will go away. And France is the only socialist government now in Europe, but they are also free market oriented. So in fact, we have a consensus on the right economic policies, and we have the same problems. We are not able to have a welfare system which is really balanced with our economic possibilities.
You talked about the lessons of the European slow growth for Korea at the IG's distinguished lecture forum. What were the main points of your speech?
I think the main point is that to have a dynamic economy, maybe slow growth is not the right word, because what is the right level of growth, you know, in a mature economy? You don't know.
You're right.
What's important is the dynamism. Today we have the feeling, and mostly the young people, we cannot find a job, that the European economy is not that dynamic. I think there are two reasons. The first one is the labor laws. Labor laws are too strict. And I think we should have deregulation in the labor market. And the countries which had labor deregulation, like Denmark, Germany, Spain now, have less unemployment. So I think it's something important for South Korea to think about the labor market. And if you have a heavily regulated labor market, the victims are the youngest people. So deregulation is good for the young people to bring dynamism into the market and dynamism into the economy. The second is welfare state, the so-called welfare state. My position is to see that if you want to have a dynamic capitalism, you need a welfare state. Because people, you know, capitalism demands what's called destructive creation. I mean, people need to change job. companies sometimes disappear because they are obsolete. So this is acceptable, socially acceptable, if there is a backup system which will guarantee that you will not fall in total poverty. So capitalism is strong if you have a welfare state. But you need to have a welfare state which is economically viable and creative. I think that South Korea should not follow the European model, but introduce new way. I promote, for example, what's called the voucher system. People receive voucher for the government to go to school and go to the school they want or the hospital they want. And also to have what's called a negative income tax. The government guarantee that you have a level of income which is decent. All these systems exist in economic books. They have been tried in certain countries, like in the United States and Chile. So I think that everyone in South Korea say we need a more welfare state. I agree, but it should be a creative and innovative welfare state, not to repeat the obsolete welfare state we have in Europe and which plays against economic dynamism.
So you just said that Korea doesn't have to follow, don't need to follow the European.
Of course not. Of course not. South Korea should no.
Now the American capitalism system seems to be broken, and I think that the Chinese system is not an answer. So, can you recommend?
Yeah, of course, you are right, but there is a third way. You have been the economists and the social scientists have been working on that since many, many years. You know, the welfare system in Europe was built in 1945 when the economic growth rate was 5%, when the demography was growing by 2%. Okay? Now population is not growing, it's getting older, like in South Korea. Growth rate is between 1 and 2%. So we built a system on fundamentals which have disappeared. So I think that in South Korea, you should once again have in mind that the welfare system is a must. So many entrepreneurs don't like that. They would prefer not to have anything. They are wrong. Because once again, to protect the people is to protect capitalism. If you don't protect the people, they will go against capitalism. Okay? But as you start not from scratch, but you start from very low, I think you should try new things and be at the top of innovation. Innovation does exist in terms of welfare and social science, and so and the tools do exist. But I have no time to elaborate. But the voucher system, the negative income tax, all this should be tried in South Korea.
I think there is kind of the hot debate about the level of the tax in Korea. Some people say that we need to raise the income tax level to expand the welfare, but the other political party are against that kind of the opinion. So, do you have some advice on the level of taxes, of the direction of tax policy?
I think it's a false debate. Because it's a very political debate. So people who want to raise taxes say there are too many rich people in South Korea, they should pay more. And so it's a very political debate, very ideological debate, and it's useless because if you raise taxes, the very wealthy people will pay nothing. They will find a legal way not to pay anything. So if you go too high, what happened in Scandinavia, for example, in Sweden, also in the United States in the 70s, taxes on the rich people were so high that the rich people just left the country.
Yeah, okay? The one guy in France, I remember, right?
Yeah, singers, football, soccer players, and so on. Okay, of course. So you need to be reasonable. I think 50% is okay. Beyond 50%, you destroy your own entrepreneur. You destroy your own entrepreneur. But the problem is not the level of taxation. The problem is the taxation must remain stable. It's very important, predictable. I think the worst tax system is what we have in France, where the level of taxation is changing every year. for political reasons. And you start from very high to show that you are on the left, and then you destroy the economy, you go down, and then back up. So for the economy, that's a disaster, because politics is short term, economics is long term.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurs, investors, innovators, they need to know what will be the tax system, the labor law, the welfare system in the 5 to 10 years to come. Okay? So predictability is more important than the level of taxation, which is a purely ideological debate.
Yeah. My next question is about the worrisome impact of the recent technological development. As you know, the new technological development such as fintech and the 3D printing may add much more convenience to our lives. However, the problem is that it takes away many jobs. So how do you foresee the future of new technology that may remove jobs?
You could have asked the same question 1 century ago, or 2 centuries ago.
Yeah.
You remember that
Industrial Revolution.
you remember that in England or in France, many workers went on rebellions and destroyed the new textile machines, considering that it would destroy their job. So it's just not true. Because the history of mankind, the history of economy, show that the consequence of innovation is that you don't lose your job, you shift from a low skill to higher skill jobs. So the problem from innovation, first, a good consequence of innovation that we work less, which is okay, and we work in less difficult jobs. We don't lose our life, in the mining industry or very, difficult work where labor had a very short lifespan. I mean, the children don't need to go to work at 12. Women can take time to raise their children. So all those are positive consequences of innovation. Now the consequence, the impact on the labor market is real. But the answer is, of course, better education. I think, which is very interesting, is that the same fear occur, time and time again, and the debate is always the same, and I'm afraid the answer is always the same.
Yeah. Now,
just think of the number of jobs which have been created in the IT sector. All around the world, you have millions of people working in the IT sector, which is a sector which didn't exist 20 years ago. Those are new jobs.
So you don't have to worry about that.
I don't worry. No, I don't worry. My parents were farmers. I'm not a farmer. I prefer my life, and I'm sure that they would prefer their life, and that's the way it goes.
Now let's turn to the Chinese economy. So the Chinese economy has been slowing down, and then many are worried about the maybe potential real estate bubble or the shadow banking, etc. Actually, you wrote about one book, about maybe many books
about China. Yes,
about China. Do you see a possibility of a hard landing in China? What's your overall take on the Chinese economy?
Yes, first of all, the very high rate of Chinese development since more than 20 years now had 2 main reasons. The first reason was the huge transfer of people from the rural area to the city area. And you know that on the very day when you shift a worker from a farm to an industry, the productivity increases very rapidly. And so the growth rate was a consequence like everywhere. It's been the case in Japan, South Korea, in France in the 19th century. So the high rate was no miracle. It was just following the economics rule by the book. And it's true that this transfer of population from the rural area to the cities is slowing down. So the growth rate is going down as a mechanical consequence of the slowing down of the rural exodus. Second, the very high growth rate was because China was starting from zero. They were catching up. And they were catching up at an extremely good period. they were catching up at a time where the whole world was growing, and China was able to become the provider of the whole world. So those were exceptional circumstances. And I think that the growth rate that we see now in China, I would say, is the normal growth rate.
Oh, yeah.
Normal growth rate of China.
New normal, right?
Exactly. I mean, they are joining, you know, the normality, and the growth rate they had before, it was not the success of the Communist Party. It was just normal economic rules which at last were applied to China. You know, when you prevent Chinese people from working during 50 years, you allow them to work, you have a high growth rate. Now, the problem, as you mentioned, is hard landing, because all this has been based on huge credit. Credit to the public sector mostly, which is not a very efficient sector. Billions have been invested in the real estate because it was the only way to put your money somewhere, because the Chinese money is not convertible. So now it all depends on the Chinese government. If they make the yuan, the Chinese money, convertible, they will avoid the real estate bubble. And I think they will do that. Yeah, I do expect a soft landing. There will be here and there some bankruptcies and some regions more impacted than others. But globally, I think the government in economy is clever enough to organize a soft landing, which really requires a convertibility of the currency. But I think they are going into that direction. But a lesson for a country like South Korea: do not depend that much on China. You know, South Korean is depending too much on China. I've been repeating that since years and years. And I told my Korean friends, China will slow down and you will be the victims. You will be impacted, and this is what is going on.
So, in terms of that perspective, can you give us some advice how we change or adjust our economy?
Well, I think for South Korea, you need to increase the workforce quantitatively and qualitatively. I mean, the workforce is already the key, okay? And your population is getting smaller and older, okay? So this has an impact on growth. Growth is slowing down because you have less dynamic workers. So you need to bring more women into the workforce. As you know, the percentage of women in the workforce in South Korea is the smallest among all OECD countries, even smaller than in Japan. So this is something to be done and can be done. And you must allow well-selected immigrants to come and work in South Korea. Not be invaded by immigrants like Europe, but you can have a selective policy to increase the workforce. So this is the first thing. Second, your education system is a bit too Confucianist, I would say, too much based on, following the rules, rote learning, and the education system should be more open to initiative from the students, bring in more foreign professors, send more students. You do a lot, but more internationalization of the education system. And also, you have been extremely successful at innovation, but innovation is concentrated into a very small number of very good companies. Hyundai, Chaebol are really world champion, but you don't have enough world champion. So I think there is no space on the market for young innovators. If Bill Gates or Steve Jobs would be South Korean, would they be able to find the money to start something? Would the bank, lend them the money to start their business? Not sure, not sure. So the Chaebol have been great, but they should leave some space to young and crazy innovators, and these young and crazy innovators should be able to receive some support from the financial system or from the Chaebol themselves.
Times are almost up, so would you say something to Korean people and say, or something like say hello and yeah.
No, look, the only thing I can say that I'm coming to South Korea since more than 30 years now, 2-3 times a year, and that I'm quite enthusiastic. It's really a success story. I mean, you have all the problems that you have, but from outside, I mean, it's a success story in terms of progress of democracy and economy. The only weakness maybe is that the Korean culture is not well promoted abroad, and that many foreigners do not understand the success of South Korea because they do not know that the success of South Korea are rooted in a civilization which they don't know abroad. So I always insist that you should promote your culture, also part of the economic dynamism.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us a valuable chance to have an interview with you and giving us very insightful opinion about many economic issues. I hope you have a wonderful trip.
My pleasure.
This time.
Thank you very much
Thank you
indeed.
very much.
Thank you.